Welcome to the Penny Z Show, where you get to learn how real people overcame real issues. Get ready to take notes and, most importantly, take action. Here's your host, Penny Z.
Hello, everyone. This is Penny Z with the Penny Z Show. We are focusing on transforming lives one life at a time with real, relevant, and relatable topics. As you all know, we are in a series called Overcoming I'm Not Enough. And we have all felt I'm not enough at some point in time in our life, whether it's been for a moment, for a season, or for most of our lives. And today we have yet another wonderful, incredible, special guest, Shaun McCloskey. I've known Shaun for almost 3 years now. We met through a mentor coaching program, which I believe everybody should be in, personally, professionally, or both. And so I'm so excited to have Shaun as a guest. Shaun, welcome to the Penny Z Show.
Oh, thank you for having me. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. You're looking wonderful, and congratulations on your new office space. That's so wonderful.
I have bare walls behind me, but it's brand new. We just moved in, so
congratulations. Absolutely. Well, Shaun, tell us a little bit about your bio, your backstory, a little bit about who you are before we get into your I'm Not Enough story for our listeners.
Oh, man. All right. The quick version is I got in corporate America for a number of years, realized there was no security in that because after I worked 90 hours a week to help build that company, I got let go. That's after they had me fire my entire staff over the course of a year. And so started my own company, Flipping Houses, and that turned years later into a successful flipping house company, which then I started getting people asking me to coach them. And then that turned into a speaking business where I started speaking all over the country. And then eventually that turned into me, unfortunately, teaching other people how to work a 90-hour-a-week business like I had. And that sucked. So I had to make some changes. So I then started learning how to run a business and also have a life at the same time. So today I coach a lot of coaches, people who run national coaching programs, national speakers, people that are in high caliber positions, in positions of leadership and influence. And I coach them and I run mastermind groups with them to help them make a bigger impact for a larger footprint of people. So that's kind of the quick version anyway.
Absolutely. And I can attest for what an incredible business mind, business coach you are. I took one of Shaun's trainings courses about 1.5 years ago, and it really made an impact on me and my business and my speaking abilities. So Shaun is definitely an expert in his field. So thank you again, Shaun.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate it.
So Shaun, as you know, we are in a series called Overcoming I'm Not Enough. And You shared with me one of your stories. I don't know if it's the one you're going to share with our listeners today, but will you share from your perspective in your life, what is one of your I'm Not Enough stories that you were able to overcome and manage in your life?
Oh man, I have 2 of them that have been absolutely life-changing. If we have time, we'll share both. But the first one happened as a result of an event that I went to a number of years ago. And what's crazy is I speak now all over the country. I've spoken on some pretty big stages all over the place. But if you would have asked me if I would have been a speaker 20, 25 years ago, the answer not only would have been no, it would have been like, oh, hell no, excuse me. But it would have been like a resounding, oh, no. A matter of fact, when I went to college for the whopping 6 months that I actually went to college at a community college here in St. Louis where I live, I took a public speaking course because I thought that'll be easy. It's one of my classes I can take to count towards something. And I took it, but I sucked at it. I was awful. And I was awful because I was a nervous wreck. As soon as I got up to, they said, share something that you know about. And so I thought, I'll share about guitar since I've known that since I was a kid. I started sharing this from the front of a room of about 15 people. And I thought I was going to have a full-blown panic attack. I was that disgusting guy with, sweat pouring out, my whole shirt you could wring out. And I was an absolute disaster. And I realized, maybe not at the time, but I realized many years later it's because of this, I'm not enough. Everybody in the room is looking at me and I don't know enough about guitar and I don't know how to explain it correctly. And all these thoughts are running through my mind. And so for me to become a national speaker today, it's just, I would have never, ever guessed in a million years this would have happened. But the reason it came this way is because I attended an event, oh my gosh, probably 12, 15 years ago. And at the event, we went through a series of exercises, one of which was remembering a few situations that happened when you were a kid that triggered any kind of major emotional moment for you. And this sounds a little cheesy, so hang out here with me for a second. But I started thinking back to a time when I really, really felt like what I had to say wasn't important or wasn't enough? Or when did I really first start having these feelings, how I feel now when I'm in front of the room talking about a guitar, which I know a lot about actually. When did it first start? And I didn't know what the answer was to this at first. I really had to think long and hard about this. And I thought back to a time, as ridiculous as this sounds, I was probably maybe, I'm not sure, 10, 11 years old, something like this. And there was a time where I went to share something very exciting, at least it was exciting to me as a 10-year-old kid, with my father. And my father used to work his butt off. I mean, all week long he would work. He was in the military growing up. So we were raised in a household where you work, and then on the weekends, maybe you get to relax a little bit. And sure enough, on Saturday, my dad would sit in front of the TV all day long and veg out and relax because he worked, 80 hours that week. So on this day, I was really excited to share something with him. I really had to think about what this was. I was really excited to share this with him, and I ran up to my father. I don't even know what it was to this day, but I was really excited. I walk up to my father. I'm like, Dad, I gotta share something that's really cool. And of course, he's zoned in on the TV, doing what dads do sometimes, which now as a father, of course, I understand as well. But he was just vegging out, probably exhausted for a week. And I'm like, Dad, I'm trying to get his attention. I'm like, Dad, what? You got to check this out. You got to check this out. And he's not even paying attention to me at all. It's like I don't even exist, right?
Right.
And then finally, I don't know how many times I interrupted him, but 3, 4, 5 times I'm trying to interrupt him and the show's still on. And, all of a sudden he just looks over at me and he's like, what? And out of pure frustration, he did what I'm sure I've done as a parent and what most parents at some point has probably done to their kids. He's like, he kind of lost it for a second. He's like, can't I just relax and be left alone for 5 minutes? And I don't know what else he said, but it was something like that. It was very intense.
Right.
And whatever it was, it shot me down hardcore. And in that moment, I made a distinction that said that the TV was more important than me. Now, that's for some of you guys, you hear this, you go, really? You're going to talk about daddy issues? We all got them, all right? They are legitimate things that happen in life.
Yes.
And I never, ever saw this. As a matter of fact, before I had done this exercise, I had never even thought about this instance that had happened or this occurrence that had happened ever in my life before. And finally, when I thought about this, I thought that's the first time I ever felt really shut down. Like, don't talk about yourself. What you have to say isn't important. It's certainly not as important as the TV. And so while I was there doing the exercise, part of the exercise was determining, well, okay, once that happens, there's always a series of things that happen after that that reinforce that new decision that you've made. So my new decision was what I have to say is not important. So to give you an idea, like I always loved people. And so all through middle school and high school and throughout the years, I was always the guy that you could come to with your problems. And I would help people with their problems all day long. I cared tremendously about people, but you would never know what any of my problems were. And the reason I never shared is because I always wanted to help you, but I wouldn't allow you to ever help me because what I have to say about my own self is not important at all. This is why when I would get speak in front of a room about something like a guitar, I would instantly start sweating and flip out because no one wants to hear this. No one cares. No one gives a crap about this guitar story that I'm getting ready to tell. Nobody cares that this is my passion that I've had since I was 13 years old. Nobody cares about that. And so when I'm thinking nobody cares, I'm thinking I don't have anything important to say. And then I shut down completely, right? So I couldn't speak. And so through, I know this sounds really corny, but through this little exercise, the next step of the exercise was to say, all right, I made a distinction that this occurrence means that this is now truth. But is that really true? Like, could this experience with my father have meant anything else? Did it have to mean that what I have to say is important? Or what if it could mean something else? What if it could mean my dad was exhausted and I interrupted him in front of his favorite TV show ever, and there's no DVR back then, and so, it's like the best part of everything, and he's getting ready to miss the best part he's been waiting for an hour and a half in his movie. I don't know. Could it have been that my father truly was just exhausted from working 80 plus hours that week, and he really did just need some downtime? Or was it for sure that what I have to say isn't important and the TV is more important than me, right? And so when I started thinking of ulterior plans, what else could this have meant? I came up with a whole page of other things. Well, it could have meant this. It could have meant that he's exhausted. It could have meant that the commercial was coming on in 2 more minutes. And could I just wait until the freaking commercial comes on, right?
Right.
Could have been it's his favorite movie. I don't know what it could have been. He got in a fight with my mom that day and he was already pissed off about something else. I don't know. But the fact of the matter is I came up with this whole page of 50 other things that it could have meant that day. And when I did that, it started to open up a little something in me. It's like, unfortunately, when I realized this, my father was no longer alive, so I couldn't have a conversation with him about this. Not that he would remember this anyway, I'm sure. But when I stopped equating that what I have to say isn't important, and I started thinking, well, wait a second. When I sit down and talk with somebody else about their issues and their problems, I think their stuff's important. Why would somebody else not think that what I have to say is important? And I started testing this just a little bit, where for the first time in my life, I started sharing things personally about myself. And I noticed that not only related to other people, but my connections with people got deeper. I was able to have conversations at a much deeper level to where they got to know me also, instead of me just prying out of them, being the guy to help all the time. And not only did it help me, my relationships grew as a result. That make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. It's really interesting because I think we went through a very similar exercise and experience. And mine started when I was 6 years old, Shaun, and my brother and I were playing outside and he got hurt. And I ran into the house to ask my mom for help because I knew my brother got hurt. And I interpreted her actions towards me as blaming me that I wasn't good enough.
Yes.
And so when she sent me to my room to handle my brother, I shut down like what you were talking about. And so it's interesting how experience is just exactly what you said. Experience in our childhood for that moment, or how we choose to interpret that experience, can shape a month, a year, years down the road in our lives. And so that's just amazing in what you're sharing and the similarities that we actually have. And I'm sure we're not the only ones out there and the only ones out there listening with that. So,
and by the way, this happens every single person on earth. And I have coached hundreds, if not thousands of people over the years. I've coached brand new people in business. I've coached young people, older people. I've coached people making $10, $20 million a year, and I've coached people making $50 a year. It doesn't matter who you, this doesn't matter what country you're from either. Every single person I have ever coached has gone through something like this and didn't know they did.
Right.
Every single one of them. They had one scenario that this is what happened, and you could fill in the blank with anything. I was raped, and therefore it means this. And so when your brain equates, this is what happened, and this may have physically happened, this actually might have happened, but your meaning as to what you attach to it is that is a choice that you get to make. And maybe you didn't make it at the time consciously, but you can actually go back and reprogram that unconscious choice that you made years ago, no different than what I did. Just because you were raped doesn't mean that you are unlovable or worthless or whatever shaming you did with yourself. It doesn't mean that you aren't loved or are incapable of love. All of those things that you may have made this thing mean. What else could it have meant? It could have meant that you were just in the wrong place at the wrong time. You know what else it could have meant? One guy was just a complete freaking jerk. And maybe that happened to him when he was little. I don't know. But this could mean, when you start writing out what else could this have meant, you'll come up with 50 different things and you go, is it sure? But in the beginning, let me warn you, in the beginning, when you first do an exercise, your brain's going to go, well, I know exactly what it means. It could have meant nothing else. And that's not entirely true. For me to look at the situation with my father and say it could have meant nothing else, come on, man. Mm-hmm. That's my own ego wanting to be right instead of exploring what else could have been a possibility. The fact of the matter is, even if my dad even if he did that intentionally, what else could it have meant? Could have meant that's exactly what his father did to him, and that's what he thought it meant to be a good father. I don't know, right. But the bottom line is it could mean something else. It doesn't have to mean I'm not enough. I'm a piece of crap. That's how I took it, though. Nothing I have to say is important. The TV is more important than me. Therefore, I'm never going to share anything again.
Right. And part of the development for all of us is really, first off, stopping and identifying the feeling that we're feeling, going back and identifying what it is that triggered that feeling for the first time, because that's usually how we carried on that feeling in our life. And then, like what you said, really, once you've identified it, work through, how do you release it now? How do you let that go? And how do you then move on? What did you do during your process to be able to kind of, you talked about how you wrote all of these things down, but how did you then take that experience to release your mindset around, not being good enough, nobody cares, to be able to shift that and move forward?
That's a great question. I will say it came with some practice, because remember, I got 20 years worth of programming saying that I'm not enough. What I have to say isn't enough. The TV is more important. And so, the first time, it's like a muscle. The first time you go and try to share anything about yourself in a situation like this, it is not comfortable at all. But pretty soon you start to be rewarded for it, even though it's scary. And when I say rewarded for it, I mean, when I started opening up just a little bit with people, and I remember how I said my relationship started to go to a deeper level, I was like, this is really cool. And I started to take on a set of new beliefs. At first, I had to just go off of faith a little bit, knowing that, all right, the same occurrence happened, but it could mean 50 other things. Let me at least try to give up the old belief of everything I have to say isn't important. And let me just see what happens in this next conversation, right? Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden the relationship opens up, it goes to a deeper level, and I make a friend and have a deeper connection with this person than I've ever had with another human being ever. And it's like, this is kind of cool. I want more of this, And so you're rewarded just a little bit. So eventually you go, okay, now I'm going to open up just a little bit more. And then you get rewarded just a little bit more. And along the way, you also might have some things reaffirming that what you have to say isn't important. Not everybody does want to hear your story. And so it would be easy to jump right back into that same old belief. But then at times I have to just go, okay, well, not everybody wants to hear it. But that doesn't mean everybody doesn't want to hear anything about me. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's actually how.
Universal belief now. And I think it's important to tell a distinction between, do I have anything to say of importance? So I don't just blab at the mouth now for an hour on end. I'm sure we all know somebody who does that. It's like they have no filter whatsoever. Everything they have to say is the most important thing on earth. Oh, and by the way, if you don't know who that person is in your own life, it's probably you. Right?
That's a good point.
I'm not saying have no filter whatsoever. I'm just saying I started to open up a little bit. I started to get rewarded for a little bit, and that makes you want to do more of it, right? It's no different than working out. When you start working out, and you've never done this before, in the beginning, it sucks. It's painful, right? And then about a week or two in, you go, this isn't as hard as it was 2 weeks ago. And then by around the third or fourth week, you start feeling the differences, and you see the differences. And all of a sudden now it's not as hard to do the same exercise as it was a month ago. And you actually start to crave it. You actually enjoy it, instead of just thinking it's something I have to do now to get through it, right?
Right, absolutely. That's actually how the Penny Z Show came about, and the topic in the series of Overcoming I'm Not Enough was going through my own personal transformation and exactly doing what you said. I wouldn't open up, I wouldn't talk to people, I wouldn't let people in. But once you start sharing your story, and sometimes it is selectively, you do have to, realize that not everybody wants to hear it, or not everybody is ready, or at a place where they can or are willing to hear it. But when I started just sharing some of my vulnerability and some of my experiences with others, that's when people started opening up to me. And someone said, you need to have a podcast with, having people be vulnerable and tell their I'm not enough story, so we don't feel alone, really. We're not the only ones out there. We're not the only ones out there, but we don't feel alone in what it is that we're experiencing and doing.
Well, and then, try to speak in front of people. It gets even more magnified. It's one thing to have a conversation one-on-one, right? If that person rejects you, you got rejection from one person. But now take the same feeling and introduce it to an audience. Doesn't matter whether it's 15 people or 500 or 1,000.
Right.
When I think I'm not enough, and you now magnify that in front of an audience, it's no joke. So do I have time to tell one more story real quick?
Absolutely, please do.
So the second one was equally as important, and it had to do with speaking in front of an audience. So I'll never forget, I didn't become a speaker because I said, well, one day I really want to be a speaker. I became a speaker because I started having success in business, and I started getting asked by local meetup groups, hey, will you come share what's working with our audience? And so I was a little reluctant to do so, first of all, because I thought that there was this scarcity mentality, you know, like if I go share with people in my own backyard what's working, they're just going to steal all my ideas and take them and run with them. And there's not enough business to go around. Well, man, I was totally wrong with that. First of all, when I started speaking, I got more business than I could possibly even handle, even from my own competition, even from my own backyard. But I also learned very quickly that even though I was now able to talk about myself a little bit more than I could have when I was younger, I was still nervous all the time. Like, to the point where when I would get ready to get up on stage, I would have that sick to your stomach feeling, you know what I mean? Now, I didn't sweat profusely like I used to because I felt a little better, but man, I would almost want to throw up every time I was getting ready to get on stage. And so I had a conversation one day with my kid sister, of all people, who I didn't think could teach me anything, you know, because she's my younger sister. And she said to me one day, she said, let me tell you a little story of what happened to me at church recently. She said, this really changed my life. And she said, my sister's a singer, by the way, and she's used to singing in the choir at church, right? What she's not used to doing is singing a cappella without the band, without, you know, everybody going behind her and all this stuff. And one day at church, she had to sing an a cappella solo, which means she, you know, the band all of a sudden stops playing. No one else is singing. It's just my sister, Carrie is her name. And Carrie has to sing for like 30 seconds and it's just her and a microphone. That's it, right? So clearly if she messes up in a group, you know, it gets blended in with the group. But if she messes up by herself, everybody hears it, right? And so she is pouncing around, you know, backstage. They're getting ready to go on. And the pastor, who's just one of the coolest guys I've ever met, his name's Dan. Dan goes up to my sister Carrie and says, what's going on? How you feeling? And, you know, Carrie's all freaking out. She's nervous. And she's like, you know, I'll do it. And he goes, you look a little nervous. Are you feeling nervous? And Carrie said, yeah, I'm a lot nervous. And Dan goes, that's interesting. Carrie, why are you here today? And she goes, well, I'm here to sing, you know. And he goes, no, I understand, but like, why are you here singing in church of all places? Who are you supposed to be singing to while you're here in church? And my sister goes, God, I guess, you know. And Dan goes, ding, 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 good answer, right? So he says, I want you to think about something for a second. If you're truly here and you're singing for God, then why are you nervous? Do you think God's going to go, oh, nice job, Carrie, but you screwed up the third note in the chorus, and that was awful, and therefore you are going to hell now for eternity, you know? And she laughed, and she's like, of course not. And he said, well, do you think God's judging whether or not you mess up at all? Or do you think he's just happy you're here singing for him? And she was like, well, I guess you're right. And he goes, then why are you nervous? And be honest. And she said, well, I don't know. I don't want to screw up. I don't want to look stupid in front of the audience. And he goes, oh, interesting. So you're being selfish. And when I first heard this, I was like, man, that sounds a little harsh, you know? Yeah. But then she went a little further. She said, Dan told her, listen, it is impossible to be nervous unless you are being selfish. He said, the reason that you're nervous is because you're focused on what is the crowd going to think of me? Am I going to sing this right? Am I going to look stupid in front of this whole audience? Am I going to do it right or am I going to do it wrong, right? Am I going to forget the words? All of your focus is on you. It's on self. It's not where it should be. He said, if you're truly singing in church, you're really singing to one dude only, and that's God, right? But even if you're not singing to God, you could be singing to the church. You could be singing for them. And instead, you're singing right now for you. That's why you're nervous. And so unless you're significant enough by not screwing up, by not forgetting the words, by hitting every note right, all those things that you say you're nervous about, then that's the only way you're going to have a good time up there. He said, I would argue that it's a much better time up there if you get outside of yourself and start doing what you're here doing for who you're here supposed to be doing it for. And she was like, wow. She went out and she goes, you know what? I'm not going to worry about it. I'm here for God. God doesn't judge how I'm singing or not. And she said she went out and she nailed it. And she goes, believe it or not, I did have a mistake or two in there and I didn't care. It was fun even though I screwed up. If I wouldn't have had that little pep talk before, I would have gone up and the minute I would have forgotten a word, guess what would have happened? You know, I'm not enough creeps in. I'm a horrible singer. I'm forgetting the words. And then what happens when your brain does that is you actually get worse. You don't get better. You forget more words. Now you're really off on the next note, right? All these things start to compound themselves over and over. So she shared that with me, and I took the same story and I thought, it's the same thing for me speaking. You know, how dare me get nervous in front of an audience? They're here. You know, when I started, I had some stuff to share in business. I thought they're here because they want to learn about business from, not only from my successes, not so I can just boast my chest out and say how good I am. I have some mistakes I can share that they'll learn from also. And so I would go out and I'd say, I'm going to share my mistakes. I'm going to share what worked, what didn't. I'm going to share what made me look stupid. I'm not going to worry if it makes me look stupid, because God knows they're already worried if they're going to look stupid. And maybe if I can not worry about it, maybe that'll be an inspiration to them a little bit. And I just went out and I shared from the heart. I shared with 100% authenticity and honesty. And guess what? I got off of myself. I got away from myself. I focused on everybody in the audience. I would look at their faces and I would think, what does he need? What does she need? What is she struggling with? And I need to help her overcome that. And guess what? I would go out in front of an audience. My nerves completely went away. And I started getting better as a speaker than I ever thought I ever would. So much so that in 11 years now since I heard that story, 12 years now since I've heard that story, I have never, ever once sought out for a speaking gig. They come find me. And I believe it's all has to do with those two conversations and me in my head no longer saying, am I enough? I'm not worried about am I enough? What I'm worried about now is I want to serve that person. What do they need in order for me to serve them? Does that make sense?
It makes
this
absolute
is a
sense.
game changer for me. And so now when I get the focus off me, I focus on them. Not only do I have more fun, they have more fun. You know, everybody tends to learn a little bit more. I can poke fun at myself. I can screw up an entire sentence structure. I can say ums and ahs and not even worry about it, nor does anybody else care, because the content is that good, because it's real, it's authentic, it's honest. And that's what people are attracted to.
Yep. And I've been in the back room when Shaun has prepared for a presentation, and he does exactly that. He basically focuses on and says, what do I need to say today that will touch the hearts of his audience? So he says he does what he says, and he says what he does. So
every single time I speak now, but believe it or not, this is what happens. Every time, still to this day, just as I'm getting ready to speak, I start to get a little nervous again. And I realize in that moment, I think of this story. Every time I speak, I go, wait a second, why am I nervous? I know why. I was just thinking, I hope I do good. I hope that, I hope the host likes what I have to say. Man, I hope I don't screw this up and don't get invited back, right? All these selfish things. I'm focused on self. And so I go back, usually with my staff, if they're there with me, we huddle around in a circle, we say a prayer, and I say, God, help me get out of myself and help me serve everybody else here. Forget about me during all this, help me serve everybody else here. And that's it. I jump up and down a little bit to get the blood flowing like a crazy idiot. I don't care. It's a blast. And then I go up, and every time we have a blast. And the nerves, by the way, as soon as I do that, they're gone.
Mm-hmm. Well, you make a great point for all of our listeners. This would be a great story for you to remember, even if it's something as small as a staff meeting, or having to do a presentation to a potential client, or have a conversation with someone. Anything that you have to do that you're feeling nervous, remember Shaun, remember his story, because this could help you get past your nerves. And really it is to be bold is getting past your fear, past your nerves, and just moving forward anyways. And this would be a great tool and a great way for those listeners out there to remember this story that Shaun has shared about himself and about his sister, Carrie, to be able to help you overcome your nervousness in a situation that you might be in. So thank you, Shaun.
What's really cool too, last thing I'll say is, anything that you're nervous about, anything that you think you're self-conscious for, you're not enough for, listen, you think you're alone? I got news for you. Pretty much everybody on earth has had the same fears. They have the same feelings. I'm not enough. There's two biggest fears I learned from another event I went to years ago. The two biggest fears everybody on earth has, everyone, regardless of nationality, age, background, everybody has these two biggest fears ingrained. More than suffocation, more than public speaking, the two biggest fears on earth are I'm not enough and I won't be loved. Do this, I won't be loved. And so we hide behind this mask instead of just but here's the thing, when you come out from underneath the mask and you start to eliminate a couple things I've talked about today, you find out everybody else has the same fears. Everybody else has the same, I'm not enough. Even the person you think, the guy or girl you think has everything together, listen, I coach those people now. They're some of the worst. They're the ones that have the biggest fears. That's one of the reasons they make so much money or are in such a public eye. They're doing this in a constant strive to be enough. So you think they have it all together? They don't. They're no different than you. They might have certain pieces together a little bit better. They're no different than you. We're all the same. We all have the same struggles. The more you can open up that piece of you, I'm telling you, man, your relationships will deepen. All of life gets better when you can just be honest and authentic.
Yeah. I remember going through an exercise as well, kind of talking about, our perception of people in the public. People do things in public eye for one of two reasons: to look good or avoid looking bad. So when we look at those successful people, and we're like, oh my gosh, there's, nothing wrong with their life, or the perfect couple or the perfect business owner or whatever, we don't get to go behind their closed doors to see that I'm not enough feeling, because they as well as so many of us, who, successful or not, don't always show that. But when we start showing a little bit of ourselves, that's when we don't worry so much about, am I doing this to look good or to avoid looking bad? I just want to connect.
It's funny you say that, because as a speaker now, I come right out of the gate and intentionally make myself look bad by sharing some real life stories. Because I know that it connects with the audience even better. If I came out and acted like, nothing bad has ever happened to me, everything I touch turns to gold, people sense that. People aren't looking for leadership that's full of crap. They want real, honest people. Now, they don't want you to just sulk in all your problems either. That's not what, I don't mean just go around talking about everything that's bad for you. I do mean being real and authentic and talking about things that other people don't talk about. And when I do that, by the way, like here for years, I would go when I would speak, I would have the option of, at the end of my presentation, selling a real estate course that people could actually buy if they wanted to take their businesses to the next level. When I started talking like that and sharing some of the things that didn't work, like my first deal, for example, the first deal I ever did in the real estate business, I lost $86,000. For years, I didn't want anybody to know about it. I was embarrassed. Well, then I go through all this and I go, what? I'm going to tell people about this. The minute I started telling people about that and I shared everything, here's what I screwed up, here's what I thought I was doing right, here's what I did wrong, guess what happened? My sales went through the roof. And I thought, why did they go through the roof? Who would want to learn from a guy who failed and lost $86,000 on my first deal? Well, it turns out most of the people in the room wanted to learn from that guy. They got so tired of hearing from the other guy or girl that's never had anything go wrong ever, that when they would hear that guy or girl speak, they'd go, well, I can't even relate to that person, and therefore I don't want to learn from them.
Absolutely.
It's crazy how it works.
Yeah, it's absolutely true. And I think a lot of times when we say things out loud and we're able to verbalize it, there's not only a helping of others, but there's a healing of ourselves.
Absolutely.
If I had a failure, or when I've had failures, it's hard to admit that out loud, but it's amazing how when you admit it out loud, whether it's to yourself, to a group, to, confidants, people you feel comfortable doing that, however you choose to do that, it's almost like it just goes away. It's just an incredible feeling. It's a release. Now that you've got it out, okay, well, now you're not having to hide behind that anymore.
There's a guy in one of my mastermind groups. If I said his name, most of you would know him because he's a national speaker. He's very, very well known. At one of our retreats, we do get these retreats, where we get together 3 times a year for a few days each. And each person gets time to go over whatever they need help with the most. And the rest of the time, everybody just feeds into them, right? And so this person went, and we've created a very, very open, honest, open environment in this case. And so he takes his turn and he says, guys, I don't know how to admit this to you. I've been struggling. I don't want to tell any of you this. Everybody thinks I'm super successful and I've had a lot of success, but as I've grown financially, I didn't know how to take care of my finances. And he said, as a result, I owe the IRS $500,000 and I don't sleep ever. This weighs on me day and night. Everybody sees that I'm super successful and I do make really good money, but my expenses are high and I owe the IRS $500,000. And it's growing because their interest rates and penalties are insane. And he said, I don't know a way out of this. And I figured I'd come and be honest with you guys. Guess what happened? My mastermind groups, I have no more than 15 is where I cap them. there were probably 4 or 5 other people in the room right there, highly successful people that had either experienced the exact same things and knew how to get out of it so they could help him, or second type of person was they were also in Joe's position right now and didn't want to admit it to anybody until he came clean. Third one was, I'm getting ready to get in Joe's position if I didn't start making some changes, and now I'm learning what not to do by what he just told us. Thank God you brought that up right now. And we had the most incredible meeting, and that's just one instance. He thought he was alone in that environment. He thought, I can't tell anybody. I'm supposed to be this big, successful national speaker. Well, guess what? Just because he knows how to go out and make a lot of money doesn't mean he was experienced in learning how to keep it.
Mm-hmm. That's true. The money mindset.
He had some areas to grow in that area, but he just didn't want to share it. When he does share it, he finds out, guess what? So many people have the same problem as him. It's crazy.
He's not alone, and he has support, and he even has expert advice on how to manage it and handle it.
And he is enough.
Yeah, absolutely.
That one situation doesn't mean that he's unworthy of teaching and speaking on how to make money in business. He does know how to do that. But he was taking that one scenario and saying, because of this, I shouldn't even be teaching. I shouldn't even be speaking. No, he shouldn't be teaching tax preparation, that's for sure. But he can still teach how to make money. And he can also teach by saying, guys, look what I just screwed up, and here's how I'm fixing it now. People will respect him more for that.
Absolutely. Well, Shaun, as we come to the end of the Penny Z show, I'd like to ask for 2 things. First off, if you have any final words of wisdom for our listeners, and then also if you'd like to share anything about your business or how people can get a hold of you, I'd greatly appreciate that. So I'll let you share.
Man, words of wisdom, I don't know. I've screwed up everything you can possibly screw up. If I've had any level of success whatsoever, it's just because I keep screwing up and then fixing it and then going to screwing up some more. So the big things I will tell you is begin to just be really vulnerable, honest, open with people. When I grew up, my parents, both my mother and father, they said, you don't talk about money with anyone. Mm-hmm. Well, guess what? They were not broke, but they never had any money, right? And so I learned later on in life, like, wealthy people talk to other people. They talk about their mistakes. They don't do that. The poor mentality hoards everything. They don't talk about anything. There's not enough to go around. They hoard, and stop hoarding, man. Go talk about this stuff. Be open with people. Your relationships will deepen. You'll find that you're having a lot more fun, and you'll find out that everybody else has the same problems you do, just in a different way, right? So that's the one piece of advice I would give. If you want to, if some of you out there are listening to this and or have a desire to become a speaker, I would tell you, go check out my website. We do a speaker training event. That's the one Penny went to a couple of years ago now. You can do that at speakertrainingworkshop.com, speakertrainingworkshop.com. Aside from that, if you're a high-level business caliber person and you want to know more about mastermind groups, you can check us out at leadershipboardroom.com. But those are the 2 things I'm working on today, and I just hope this resonated with somebody. So if you don't visit one of my websites at all, I'm totally fine with that, but I hope you actually do something what we've talked about today, man. It's changed my life.
Absolutely. Well, Shaun, thank you so much. You've changed my life. Being a part of my life and sharing your story. And I'm sure there is someone or someone's out there, because we work on transforming lives one life at a time. We just never know who's listening and how we transform their lives, because we don't always get the feedback. But for those of you on the Penny Z Show, we greatly appreciate you listening, following, liking, sharing the Penny Z Show on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, YouTube, and of course on our website on www.thepennyzshow.com. We look forward to yet another Overcoming I'm Not Enough series next week. So thank you, Shaun, so much again for your time and your talent. And this is Penny Z saying, have a great day. Thank you
for what you do, Penny. Keep doing what you do. I love you, and you're doing something really, really awesome here. So keep talking about it. I appreciate everything you're doing.
Thanks, Shaun. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much for listening. If you want to hear more, including specific ways to empower yourself, go to thepennyzshow.com.